Welcome to Hauntales, where darkest stories come alive. I know many of you tune into these tales to drift off to sleep, so settle in, relax, and get comfortable. Whether you're lying in bed or curled up on the couch, let the whispers of these chilling encounters carry you away. Before we begin tonight's story, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more spine-tingling tales. And let me know in the comments where are you listening from, and what time is it. I love seeing how far our stories travel. For the best experience, use your headphones, close your eyes, and let every word sink deep into your mind. Now we begin our stories for tonight. The Infested Cave. The air was thick with humidity as I crouched low, squeezing through a narrow crevice in the rock face of the cave. I could feel the cool stone against my back, and the faint sounds of dripping water echoed all around me, creating an unsettling symphony of nature. The torchlight flickered and danced along the jagged walls, revealing ancient carvings that told stories of a time long forgotten. I felt a thrill of excitement mixed with a growing sense of dread. My name is Alex, and I had come here with my friends Maya, Jake, and Clara to explore the Cave of Elders, a legendary site whispered about in our small town. The locals spoke of strange occurrences and unexplainable phenomena tied to this cave, stories that had intrigued us ever since we were children. However, my friends and I, filled with the arrogance of youth and curiosity, dismissed these tales as mere myths, relics of a superstitious past. As I crawled deeper into the cave, the entrance was just a small dot of light behind us. Clara, who had insisted on coming, gripped my arm tightly, her eyes wide with both excitement and fear. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Come on, Clara. Where's your sense of adventure?" Jake called back, his voice echoing down the narrow passage. He was always the daredevil, pushing the boundaries of our comfort zones. Maya, ever the practical one, rolled her eyes. "Let's just keep going. I want to see what's down here," she urged, and we continued further into the darkness. After what felt like hours of crawling and squeezing through tight spaces, we finally entered a large chamber, the torchlight illuminating the vast expanse around us. Stalactites hung like fangs from the ceiling, and the ground was littered with debris and small puddles of water. It was breathtaking and horrifying all at once. "This place is incredible," Jake exclaimed, shining his flashlight on the walls. "Look at those carvings. They're amazing." As we gathered closer to inspect the ancient symbols, I felt a cold breeze ripple through the chamber, causing the hairs on my arms to stand on end. It was odd we were deep within the earth, yet I could feel an unnatural chill surrounding us. "Maya, can you check the map again?" I asked, trying to shake off the eerie feeling settling in my gut. "Yeah, sure." She pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from her backpack, squinting at the dim light. "According to this, we're right on top of the main cavern where they say." Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled, a low rumble resonating through the cave. Dust and small stones fell from the ceiling, and our flashlights flickered ominously. "What the hell was that?" Clara shrieked, looking around in panic. "Earthquake," Jake suggested, but I could tell he was just as uncertain as the rest of us. As the shaking subsided, a heavy silence enveloped us. I took a deep breath to steady my nerves, but something was off. A whisper floated through the air, faint yet distinct, like a voice calling from the depths of the cave. "Hey, did you guys hear that?" I asked, my heart racing. "Yeah, it sounded like someone was talking," Clara whispered, her eyes darting nervously. "Maybe it's just the wind," Jake shrugged, though his voice lacked conviction. Maya furrowed her brow. "We should get out of here. This doesn't feel right." Before I could respond, another tremor shook the ground. The sound of stone scraping against stone echoed ominously, followed by a low growl that resonated through the chamber. The sound seemed to come from the darkness beyond our flashlight's reach. "What was that?" Clara's voice quivered as she pressed closer to me, her grip tightening on my arm. I don't know," I stammered, my pulse pounding in my ears. "We need to go now." Just as we turned to leave, the cave shook violently again, and a massive rock fell from above, narrowly missing Jake and landing with a thunderous crash. The air filled with dust and debris, and our flashlights flickered ominously before going out, plunging us into darkness. "Guys, stay close," I shouted, my voice barely cutting through the panic. The darkness enveloped us like a suffocating shroud, and I could hear Clara's ragged breathing next to me. "Alex, what do we do?" she whispered, fear etched in her voice. "Just keep moving. We'll find our way back to the entrance," I urged, trying to sound more confident than I felt. And we stumbled through the dark, our hands outstretched, searching for the narrow passage we had come through. My heart raced as I heard a soft whispering sound growing louder, echoing through the chamber. "Alex," the voice was ethereal, almost melodic, yet filled with a haunting quality. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. The whispering intensified, the sound swirling around us, blending with the sounds of the cave, the dripping water, the rustling of stones, and our frantic footsteps. It felt as if the darkness was alive, wrapping around us, closing in. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw a shadowy figure, indistinct and amorphous, lurking just beyond the edge of my flashlight's beam. My breath caught in my throat, and I froze in place. "What's wrong?" Clara asked, her voice shaking. "Something's out there," I whispered, my heart pounding. Before I could react, the figure darted into the light, revealing a grotesque form, a twisted silhouette that resembled a person but was all wrong. Its limbs were elongated, fingers tapering into sharp points, and its face was a mask of darkness, with hollow eyes that seemed to absorb the light around it. I screamed, turning to run, pushing past Clara and Jake, desperation fueling my flight. The whispers escalated into frantic chatter, filling my mind with a cacophony of voices that drowned out everything else. "Alex, wait!" May's voice cut through the chaos, but I couldn't stop. I sprinted toward what I hoped was the exit, the dark figure trailing behind me, its presence like a shadow on my back. As I plunged into the narrow crevice, I could feel the walls closing in, suffocating me with fear. The whispers became screams echoing in my mind. I could barely breathe as I scrambled through the tight passage, the darkness threatening to swallow me whole. "Don't leave us," Clara cried from behind me, and I felt a pang of guilt at leaving my friends, but my instincts screamed that I needed to escape. Finally, I burst into the open air, falling out of the cave and collapsing onto the forest floor. I gasped for breath, the cool night air filling my lungs, but the whispers were still with me, echoing in the silence. "Alex." I turned to see Jake and Maya emerge from the cave, their faces pale and wide-eyed. "Where's Clara?" I gasped, my heart racing. "She was right behind us. We thought you were coming," Jake exclaimed, panic creeping into his voice. "No, we have to go back. We can't leave her," I shouted, scrambling to my feet. Maya grabbed my arm, her grip firm. "No, we can't. That thing, it's not human. We need to get help." The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. "Clara," I yelled, but the cave remained silent, a dark maw that held onto its secrets. The three of us stumbled backward, fear propelling us away from the cave as the shadows of the trees loomed ominously around us. I could still hear the whispers, mingling with the rustling leaves, their meaning slipping through my fingers like sand. As we reached the edge of the woods, I glanced back at the cave, dread gnawing at my insides. I knew we had to come back for Clara, but the thought of facing that entity again filled me with terror. Days turned into weeks as we reported Clara's disappearance. The townspeople whispered about the cave, casting wary glances in its direction. Some even spoke of the Watcher, the non-human entity that was said to guard the cave, ensuring no one disturbed its slumber. Every night I could feel Clara's absence like a weight on my heart, and the whispers haunted my dreams. I could see her face, hear her laughter, and feel the warmth of her presence. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still out there, trapped within the depths of the cave, lost to something dark and ancient. Determined to find her, I gathered Jake and Maya one last time. "We have to go back," I insisted, gripping the map tightly in my hands. "We can't leave her there." "Ah." They exchanged nervous glances, but I could see the resolve forming in their eyes. "We'll bring flashlights and supplies," Maya said, her voice steady despite the fear that hung in the air. That night, we returned to the cave, flashlights in hand and hearts pounding with dread. The entrance loomed before us, a dark mouth waiting to swallow us whole. "Clara," I called into the void, my voice echoing back like a taunt. We entered cautiously, the familiar sounds of dripping water and soft whispers enveloping us. As we moved deeper, the air grew colder, and I could feel the weight of something watching us, lurking just beyond the reach of our lights. "Stay close," Jake urged, his voice barely above a whisper. We pressed on, navigating through the narrow passages until we reached the chamber where we had last seen Clara. The ancient carvings glinted in the light, and the shadows danced ominously on the walls. "Clara," I called again, desperation creeping into my voice. The whispers grew louder, coiling around us like smoke. It was then that I felt it, an icy breeze cutting through the air, swirling around me, tugging at my clothes. "Alex," Maya gasped, pointing toward the shadows. There, emerging from the darkness, was the twisted figure. Its elongated limbs stretched toward us, its hollow eyes glowing with an eerie light. "Run," I shouted, and we bolted back through the cave, the sounds of our frantic footsteps drowning out the whispers. The creature chased us, its movements fluid and unnatural, echoing in the darkness like a nightmare given form. The whispers became screams, drowning out everything else as we sprinted through the narrow crevices, desperate to escape. Suddenly I stumbled, falling to the ground as my flashlight flicked or died. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet, but I could feel the darkness closing in, the whispers wrapping around me like chains. "Keep going," Jake shouted, his voice distant as he and Maya pushed ahead. I could hear the growls and the whispers converging, rising in a crescendo of sound that threatened to swallow me whole. I had to keep moving, had to escape. Just as I thought I was lost forever, I burst into the open air once again, collapsing onto the forest floor. I gasped for breath, my heart pounding in my chest as I looked around for my friends. "Jake, Maya," I cried, fear gripping my heart as I scrambled to my feet. But the forest was silent. A chilling realization washed over me. Whatever had taken Clara might have taken them too. I staggered back, fear clawing at my throat as the darkness crept closer, whispers echoing in my mind. And suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around, heart racing, but it was only Clara, her eyes wide and filled with a hollow sadness. "Go help me," she whispered, her voice barely a breath, and I could see the darkness lurking behind her, a shadow that threatened to consume her. "Clara," I screamed, reaching out to her, but the darkness surged, pulling her back into the shadows. "Run, Alex," she cried, desperation etched across her face. "You have to go. It's not safe." The whispers rose to a deafening roar, echoing in my mind as I felt the darkness closing in around me. I turned and ran, the memories of my friends flooding my mind. The laughter, the adventures, the moments we had shared, all now lost to the shadows. As I sprinted through the forest, the whispers chased me, growing fainter as I emerged into the open. I stumbled into the clearing, collapsing onto the grass, gasping for breath. The cave loomed behind me, a dark maw that swallowed all light, but the whispers had faded into silence. I lay there, heart racing, knowing I had escaped but feeling the weight of loss heavy in my chest. Clara, Jake, Maya, they were gone, consumed by the darkness that had taken root in the cave. I could still hear Clara's voice in my mind, her plea echoing like a ghost. "Help me." And in that moment, I understood the truth. The cave was not just a place of adventure, it was a prison for those who ventured too deep, and the non-human entity that dwelled within was its warden. I had survived, but at what cost? I would carry their memories with me, a constant reminder of the price of curiosity and the whispers that haunted the darkness. As I lay in the clearing, a cold sweat drenching my clothes, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness wasn't done with me yet. I scrambled to my feet, scanning the trees, as if they might offer some protection against the unseen terror. Suddenly, a rustling in the underbrush drew my attention. My heart raced, pulse pounding in my ears as I instinctively backed away. "Is anyone there?" I called, my voice trembling. Silence answered, heavy and oppressive. But then, I heard it again, a whispering, almost melodic, weaving through the air like a siren's song. "Alex." I recognized that voice. Clara. But how could it be? My breath caught in my throat as the whisper grew louder, more insistent. Help me. Come closer. I hesitated, torn between the desire to rescue her and the instinct to flee. The darkness seemed to pulse around me like a living entity, urging me to step back. But Clara's voice wrapped around me, luring me with the promise of hope. Please, Alex. I need you. Against my better judgment, I followed the sound, my feet moving almost of their own accord. The trees twisted and turned, the shadows deepening as I ventured further into the woods. The air grew colder, each breath I took feeling more labored, more desperate. With each step, I felt the weight of the entity's presence pressing down on me, thick and suffocating. I fought to remain focused, but the whispers started to morph into something darker, a sinister chant echoing in my mind, drowning out Clara's voice. Join us. Join us. Suddenly I stumbled into a clearing, and there was a circle of stones, ancient and weathered, pulsing with an eerie light. In the center stood Clara, her form shifting, flickering like a dying flame. Help me, Alex, she cried again, but her voice was distorted now, laced with a sorrow that twisted my heart. As I approached, the shadows surged, swirling around me like tendrils, and I realized with horror that the darkness was alive, feeding off my fear. No, I shouted, pulling back, but it was too late. I was ensnared, drawn toward the circle. Join us, the whispers crescendoed, and I could see other figures emerging from the shadows, Jake and Maya, their faces twisted in anguish, eyes pleading as they reached for me. Terror seized my heart as I fought against the pull, but it felt like trying to escape quicksand. The entity's power was overwhelming, suffocating. I had to find a way to break free, to save my friends. Summoning every ounce of strength, I shouted, I won't let you take me. The ground shook beneath me, and the shadows recoiled, momentarily releasing their grip. In that fleeting moment of clarity, I remembered the stories Clara had shared about the cave. A way to combat the entity lay within its walls. I'll come back for you, I promised, the words tearing from my lips as I turned and ran, leaving the circle and its dark allure behind. As I raced through the forest, the whispers faded into the background, replaced by the deafening roar of my heartbeat. I didn't know what awaited me in the cave, but I knew I had to return, for Clara, for Jake, for Maya. This time, I would not go alone. I would gather help, gather strength, and return to face the darkness that claimed them. The night had just begun, and I was determined to uncover the secrets of the cave, to confront the non-human entity that had taken so much from me. With each step back toward home, I felt a flicker of hope reigniting in my chest, knowing I would fight against the whispers, the shadows, and whatever lay in the depths of that cursed cave. As I stumbled through the dense forest, adrenaline coursing through my veins, I made my way back to my car, determination setting my jaw. I couldn't leave Clara, Jake, and Maya behind. The whispers still echoed in my mind, haunting and relentless. Just as I reached the edge of the clearing, a figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the moonlight. It was Sarah, Clara's older sister, who had been searching for us since the night we entered the cave. Alex. Thank God I found you, she exclaimed, relief flooding her voice. I was worried sick. Where are Clara and the others? I hesitated, the weight of my fear making it hard to find the words. They're lost. Something is in the cave, something dark. We have to go back. Sarah's expression shifted from concern to disbelief. You want to go back? Alone? After what happened? It wasn't just an adventure. There's something powerful in there, I said, desperation creeping into my voice. Clara needs us. She's trapped. Sarah's brow furrowed as she processed my words, and I could see her resolve hardening. All right, I'll help you. But we need to be careful. If something's in there, we can't face it unprepared. We drove back to the forest, the car's headlights cutting through the darkness like a knife. The air was thick with anticipation as we parked, the cave's entrance looming ahead like an ominous mouth ready to swallow us whole. Do you have any supplies? I asked, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Sarah opened the trunk, revealing flashlights, ropes, and a small first aid kit. I've been preparing since Clara went missing, she said, determination flaring in her eyes. I won't leave her behind. Equipped with our gear, we entered the cave, the cool air brushing against our skin like a warning. The familiar sounds of dripping water echoed through the chambers, but the whispers had grown louder, more insistent, curling around us like a tangible force. Clara, I called, my voice swallowed by the darkness. Stay alert, Sarah whispered, shining her flashlight around the cavernous space. We need to find her fast. We pressed deeper into the cave, our lights flickering against the ancient carvings that lined the walls, each symbol pulsating with an otherworldly energy. The oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on my chest, making it hard to breathe as we navigated through the narrow passages. Suddenly, we heard a soft sobbing echo through the cave. My heart raced as I recognized Clara's voice. Clara, I shouted, rushing toward the sound, but the path twisted unexpectedly, leading us deeper into the darkness. Wait, Sarah called, grabbing my arm. We can't rush in blindly. The sobbing grew louder, mingling with the haunting whispers that urged us forward. Help me. Please, Clara's voice pleaded, echoing in my mind like a haunting melody. Clara, I called again, desperation clawing at my throat. We finally emerged into a larger chamber, the air thick with shadows. Clara stood at the center, her form flickering between reality and something ethereal, her eyes wide with fear. Alex, she cried, reaching out to me. But just as I stepped forward, the shadows shifted, morphing into a grotesque figure that loomed over her, a creature with elongated limbs, its hollow eyes glowing with a sickly light. No, I shouted, instinctively stepping between Clara and the entity. Get back, Sarah yelled, raising her flashlight to shine on the creature, but the light seemed to weaken in its presence, barely illuminating the darkness that surrounded it. The entity let out a low growl, a sound that resonated deep within my chest, vibrating with an ancient malice. The whispers turned into a cacophony of voices, each pleading for help, each echoing the desperation that had brought us here. Alex, we need to get out. Clara's voice trembled, her fear palpable. But the creature lunged, its elongated fingers stretching toward us with terrifying speed. I grabbed Clara's hand, pulling her back just in time as Sarah swung her flashlight, creating a small circle of light that momentarily repelled the creature. We can't stay here, I shouted, adrenaline flooding my body as I searched for an escape. Back through the passage, Sarah urged, her voice steady amidst the chaos. With Clara's hand in mine, we ran, dodging the shadows that clawed at our heels. The whispers chased us, a chorus of lost souls crying out for salvation, but I couldn't look back. I focused on the flickering light ahead, knowing that it led us to safety. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath our feet, and I stumbled, almost losing my grip on Clara. Keep going, Sarah shouted, her voice breaking through the panic. We reached the narrow passage we had entered through, the cave walls closing in around us as the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar. Just as we neared the exit, the entity lunged again, its form a blur of darkness. "Run," I screamed, pushing Clara and Sarah ahead of me as I braced myself for impact. The creature's claws grazed my shoulder, a sharp pain igniting through my body as I felt myself being pulled back into the shadows. "No," Clara cried, turning to help me, but I shouted, "Go. You have to escape." With a surge of strength, I pushed forward, breaking free from its grasp just as we burst into the open air. The moonlight flooded over us, and I collapsed onto the grass, gasping for breath. Clara and Sarah quickly turned back, watching as the cave yawned behind us, the shadows retreating into its depths. Alex, Clara's voice trembled, but I could see the relief flooding her eyes. The creature had vanished, but the whispers lingered in the air, a reminder of the terror we had faced. I lay there, staring up at the night sky, my heart racing, knowing the battle was far from over. "I'm so sorry," Clara whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "I thought I could make it on my own. I thought I could find a way out." "It wasn't your fault," I replied, pulling her close, feeling the warmth of her presence grounding me in that moment. "We'll figure this out together." But even as I spoke, I couldn't shake the feeling that the entity was still watching us, waiting for its moment to strike again. "We need a plan," Sarah said, breaking the silence, determination flooding her voice. "There has to be a way to confront it, something in the cave that can help us." I nodded, a surge of purpose igniting within me. "I'll go back. I'll face it, but I need your help." The air felt charged with unspoken fears, but we were no longer just three friends lost in an adventure. We were a team, ready to confront the shadows together. As we prepared to return to the cave, I realized that the darkness held more than just a monster. It held the secrets of the lost, and it was time to uncover them. Whatever awaited us in the depths of that cave, we would face it together. As we stood at the entrance of the cave, the air thick with tension and uncertainty, I took a deep breath. We had a plan, but it would require bravery and teamwork, qualities we would need to rely on now more than ever. "Remember, we stick together," I said, looking at Clara and Sarah. "No matter what happens, we don't leave anyone behind." They nodded, determination flickering in their eyes. We stepped into the darkness, our flashlights cutting through the shadows as we navigated the familiar path, the whispers already beginning to swirl around us, beckoning us deeper. "Stay close," Sarah warned, her voice steady but low. The atmosphere felt charged, alive with anticipation, and I could feel the creature's presence lurking just beyond the edge of our lights. We made our way back to the chamber where Clara had been trapped, my heart pounding as the low growl of the entity echoed through the cavern. It felt as if the walls themselves were alive, closing in around us. "Here," I said, pointing to the circle of stones in the center of the room. "We need to use these against it." "Against what?" Clara asked, eyes darting nervously around us. "Against the creature," I replied, trying to mask the fear lacing my voice. "If we can channel whatever power's in these stones, we might be able to banish it." As we approached the stones, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices begging for release. I could almost hear their stories, each one filled with sorrow and desperation, but I couldn't lose focus. We had to act fast. "Let's form a circle," Sarah instructed, her voice cutting through the chaos. We stood shoulder to shoulder around the stone circle, hands clasped together. I closed my eyes, feeling the energy of the cave pulse beneath my feet. "We need to focus on our intention to protect each other and drive the darkness away," I said, urging them to concentrate. As we stood there, the growl of the entity grew louder, reverberating off the walls like thunder. The shadows thickened, swirling around us like a living storm, but I pressed on, feeling Clara's grip tighten in my hand. Now I shouted, and we all concentrated, channeling our energy into the circle. The stones began to glow with an intense light, illuminating the chamber with a brilliant white hue that pierced through the darkness. The growling turned to shrieks, the entity clearly in pain as it writhed in the light. "Keep going," Sarah shouted, her voice unwavering despite the chaos. We poured our fears, our hopes, and our determination into the stones. The light expanded, pushing back the shadows, and for a moment I felt a sense of unity envelop us, binding our hearts and souls together against the dark. The entity lunged toward us, its elongated limbs reaching out, but the light intensified, engulfing it in a blinding flash. A sound like shattering glass filled the chamber, and I felt the darkness recoil, shrieking in rage. Suddenly the cave began to tremble violently, rocks falling from above, dust and debris swirling around us. "We have to get out," Clara screamed, her eyes wide with fear. We turned to run, navigating the collapsing cave, the light still pulsating behind us as we fled. The air felt electric, crackling with the power we had unleashed. Just as we reached the entrance, a deafening roar echoed from the depths of the cave, shaking the ground beneath our feet. The shadows surged, attempting to pull us back, but we burst through the opening into the cool night air, the cave collapsing behind us. Panting and gasping for breath, we collapsed onto the ground, the moonlight bathing us in its calming glow. The air felt lighter, the oppressive weight of the cave lifted as if a dark curtain had been drawn back. "We did it," Sarah gasped, disbelief dancing in her eyes. "Clara, are you okay?" I asked, reaching for her hand. She nodded, tears of relief streaming down her face. "I can't believe we made it out." As we lay there, catching our breath, I could see the faint glow of the stones dimming in the entrance of the cave, a sign that the entity had been banished for now. But as we sat up, a shiver ran down my spine. I turned back to the cave, a sense of foreboding creeping in. The darkness was still there, lurking at the edges, waiting for another chance to strike. "Let's go home," Clara said softly, her voice steady. We all nodded, and together we walked away from the cave, leaving behind the memories of our harrowing adventure. But as we made our way back to the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. The whispers had quieted, but I knew they would always be a part of us now. The darkness would return, but next time we would be ready. Together we had faced the shadows, and we would do so again, no matter what form it took. As we drove away, I glanced back at the cave one last time, a sense of resolve filling my heart. The entity had been banished, but the stories of the lost souls lingered, a reminder that even in darkness, we could find light. And in the distance, just beyond the tree line, I thought I saw a flicker of movement, an echo of the entity waiting, watching, ready for its next opportunity. But I would not let fear define me. I had faced the darkness and survived, and if it ever dared to return, we would face it together. With that thought, I turned my attention back to the road ahead, ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that our bond was stronger than any shadow. As I leaned back against the cool surface of the car, the adrenaline from our harrowing escape slowly faded, replaced by an overwhelming wave of exhaustion. The road stretched ahead, illuminated by the pale glow of the headlights, but my mind was somewhere far more tumultuous. I had faced a non-human entity in the darkness of that cave, an experience that shattered my perception of reality. Now, with the adrenaline coursing through my veins dissipating, I found myself reflecting on everything that had just transpired. What had I learned about myself in those chilling moments? It wasn't just the terror of facing something so dark and primal, it was the confrontation with my own fears, my limitations, and my strength. I thought back to the shadows that had whispered to me, the way they had almost seduced me into submission. For a moment I had felt the weight of despair, the desire to give up and let the darkness consume me. But I hadn't. I had fought back. "Clara, are you okay?" I had asked her in the cave, my voice barely a whisper, laced with concern. I remembered the way her eyes had mirrored my fear and resolve. We had rallied together, refusing to let the darkness tear us apart. In that moment it hit me my strength wasn't just mine alone. It was the bond I shared with Clara and Sarah. Together we had tapped into something powerful, something that transcended our individual fears. The fear of being alone in the face of something so overwhelmingly dark had been alleviated by their presence. Reflecting on that, I realized I had often approached challenges with a solitary mindset. I had thought I had to tackle everything alone, to bear the weight of my burdens in silence. But in the cave, I understood the importance of vulnerability and trust. It was okay to lean on others, to share the load. I thought about the entity, the embodiment of fear itself. What had it really represented? It was the darkest parts of me, the fears I buried deep down, fear of failure, of rejection, of the unknown. In its twisted form, it had drawn strength from my anxieties. The image of its twisted, elongated limbs flashed before my eyes, and I shivered. I had faced that darkness, and more importantly, I had faced myself. In that confrontation, I discovered that fear is a natural part of being human, but allowing it to control me was a choice I didn't have to make. As we drove through the quiet night, I thought about the stories that would continue to echo through the cave. The lost souls that had whispered their despair. They too had faced their own fears, but their stories had ended there, trapped in darkness. I felt a surge of responsibility, a new purpose igniting within me. Their stories needed to be told. I wanted to give a voice to those lost in fear, to help others confront their shadows rather than succumb to them. This experience had transformed me. I could no longer remain passive in my life. Looking out at the darkened landscape, I took a deep breath, the cool night air filling my lungs. The weight of what we had experienced settled in a mixture of fear and resolve, pain and understanding. I was different now. We had confronted something unimaginable and emerged stronger, but the journey wasn't over. "Hey," Clara's voice broke through my thoughts. "Are you with us?" I turned to see her looking at me, concern etched on her face. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. "I'm right here." We would carry these memories together. The darkness may have retreated for now, but I knew it would always linger at the edges of our lives, waiting for another chance. But we would be ready. I had learned that I could face whatever came next, not alone, but alongside my friends. As we continued down the winding road, I embraced the uncertainty ahead. Whatever lay in wait, I was prepared to confront it, not just for myself, but for all the stories yet to be told. The journey would be long, but with every mile I felt a deeper connection to those around me and to myself. In that moment of reflection, I made a silent vow I would not only face my fears, but also help others to do the same. Together, we could illuminate the darkness, and in the end, we would find our way back to the light. Story 2. Reflections of Apathy. I had never been one for grand ambitions. My days blurred together like the endless stream of episodes on the streaming service I paid for with my small inheritance. At 25, I was perfectly content to live in my cramped apartment, surrounded by half-eaten takeout containers, stacks of forgotten laundry, and the faint hum of my TV, a constant companion in my lazy existence. It wasn't that I didn't have dreams, it was just that none of them ever seemed worth the effort. I woke up one Tuesday morning to a dull thud against my front door. I groaned, pushing my blanket off and shuffling to the door, where I found a package waiting. The cardboard was battered and old, as if it had been sitting around for ages before finally being sent to me. I opened it lazily, curious yet indifferent, my mind half focused on the latest season of that show about a group of teenagers battling supernatural forces. Inside the box lay a mirror, an ornate, vintage piece with a gilded frame that glimmered even in the dim light of my apartment. I blinked at it, feeling a flicker of intrigue, but shrugged it off. Just a stupid decoration, I muttered, dragging the heavy object inside. I placed the mirror against the wall, its surface reflecting the chaos of my life, clothes strewn everywhere, dirty dishes piled high, and me, a disheveled mess in a faded t-shirt. The mirror didn't seem to care. It just sat there, quietly watching me, or so it felt. I dismissed the notion as a figment of my overactive imagination and returned to the couch, ready to resume my binge watching. The first unsettling incident happened that night. I had fallen asleep on the couch, the glow of the TV flickering in the darkness. Around 3 in the morning, I woke to an icy draft swirling through the room. Goosebumps prickled on my arms as I glanced around, the shadows of my messy apartment deepening in the gloom. As I turned toward the mirror, I noticed something strange. A shadow flickered across its surface, darker than the surrounding darkness. I blinked, wondering if I was still dreaming, but the shadow remained. It looked like a figure, a fleeting glimpse of something that felt wrong. Get a grip, Jake, I muttered to myself, trying to shake off the unease. It's just a stupid mirror. I turned back to the couch, dismissing it as a trick of the light, but the whispers began soon after. At first they were soft, almost inaudible, like the rustling of leaves outside my window. I ignored them, hoping they would fade as I sank back into the comfort of my shows. But the whispers persisted, growing clearer. They seemed to call my name, a haunting echo that gnawed at my thoughts. Jake. Jake. I sat up, heart racing, and squinted at the mirror. The shadows danced across the surface, teasing me with secrets I wasn't ready to uncover. I wrapped myself tighter in my blanket and tried to focus on the screen, forcing myself to ignore the creeping dread. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of my phone buzzing. A reminder I had set weeks ago about a bill that needed paying. I groaned, rolling over and ignoring it. My life was a series of unfulfilled obligations, and I preferred it that way. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Items began to go missing: my keys, my favorite hoodie, a half-eaten bag of chips. Each time, I would find myself glancing at the mirror, a vague unease settling in my stomach. I tried to rationalize it. I was just messy. I probably misplaced them. It wasn't the mirror's fault. But then came the dreams. Night after night, I was drawn into dark, twisting hallways filled with shadows that beckoned me closer. In my dreams, I would find myself standing in front of the mirror, staring into the depths of my own reflection, which began to warp and twist. My face would contort, the features melting into something grotesque and unrecognizable. Each time I woke in a cold sweat, heart racing, convinced I had seen something, someone watching me from the other side. Finally, I had enough. I decided to research the mirror's origins, even though the effort seemed monumental. The internet was a vast sea of information, but all I found were vague references to it having once belonged to an infamous occultist named Victor Draven. He was known for dabbling in dark magic, using the mirror as a portal to commune with spirits. But as I dug deeper, I found warnings that made my skin crawl. Stories of the people who had owned the mirror before me flooded my mind. Each tale echoed the same theme: they were drawn to its allure, seeking power, wealth, or forbidden knowledge, only to be consumed by the darkness it harbored. The last owner had vanished under mysterious circumstances. The more I read, the more I felt the mirror was feeding off my curiosity, encouraging me to dig deeper. One night, I decided to confront it. I stood before the mirror, the shadows inside swirling like a storm. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, my voice barely a whisper. The whispers grew louder, forming words that scraped against my sanity. "Join us. Be like us." I stumbled back, heart pounding. I didn't want to join anyone. I was content to drift through life, wasn't I? But a part of me felt a strange pull, a whisper that promised something I had never allowed myself to crave: power, ambition, purpose. I felt the mirror's dark influence clawing at the edges of my apathy, tempting me to step closer to the abyss. Days turned into a blur. I tried to ignore the mirror, but it haunted my thoughts. I stopped watching TV, stopped eating, and instead spent hours researching Victor Draven and his rituals. The more I learned, the more I understood the dangerous allure of the occult. The idea that I could be more than a lazy, apathetic slacker began to take root in my mind. One night, I couldn't resist any longer. I lit candles in front of the mirror and attempted a simple summoning, just to see if it would work. I called out to Victor Draven, the name feeling heavy on my tongue, and waited. The air grew thick, and shadows danced in the corners of the room, whispering in tones I couldn't quite decipher. Then, something shifted. I felt a cold breeze wash over me, and the shadows in the mirror swirled more violently. My reflection began to shimmer, and I was no longer just looking at myself. I saw a figure standing behind me, a tall man with piercing eyes and an unsettling grin. "Welcome, Jake," he said, his voice smooth like silk but edged with danger. "I've been waiting for you." I felt my heart pound in my chest. "What do you want?" "To help you fulfill your potential. To show you the power you can wield," he replied, stepping closer to the surface of the mirror. "Join me, and together we can achieve greatness." I hesitated, the offer tantalizing yet terrifying. Part of me longed to escape the mediocrity of my existence, but at what cost? The weight of his gaze pressed down on me, urging me to surrender my doubts and embrace the darkness. "What's the catch?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Only your soul," he said, a wicked smile spreading across his face. "A small price for such power. You would never have to be lazy or unmotivated again. You could take control of your life." In that moment, I felt a surge of energy coursing through me, a thrill I had never experienced. The prospect of finally being someone worth remembering was intoxicating. But the stories of the mirror's previous owners echoed in my mind, warning me against the seduction of dark power. "No," I said, shaking my head, trying to push back against the pull of the mirror. "I won't do it." "Foolish boy," Victor sneered, and the shadows around him writhed in anger. "You think you can resist? You are already mine." Panic flooded through me. I backed away from the mirror, but the whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. "Join us. Join us." The darkness clawed at my sanity, and I stumbled back, feeling the coldness of the room seep into my bones. But as I stumbled backward, my foot caught on something an old book one had tossed aside during my research. I looked down, recognizing it as a journal containing accounts of those who had fallen victim to the mirror's dark influence. In a moment of desperation, I grabbed it and hurled it at the mirror's surface. "Leave me alone," I shouted. But the book hit the mirror with a resounding crash, and for a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze. The glass rippled, distorting the reflection until it shattered like fragile ice, sending shards flying across the room. I shielded my face with my arms, heart racing. When I lowered them, I found myself staring at the remnants of the mirror, the fragments gleaming like fallen stars on the floor. For a moment, silence enveloped me, and I dared to hope that I had broken the mirror's hold. But then I heard it, the whispers transformed into anguished wails, rising in a cacophony of despair. I staggered back as the shadows twisted and coalesced, taking form amidst the chaos. The spirits of those who had been trapped reached out, their eyes filled with sorrow and anger. "Release us," they cried, voices mingling with my own fear. "You cannot escape our fate." Panic surged through me, and I bolted for the door, frantically fumbling with the knob. As I yanked it open, the last remnants of the mirror's influence surged forth, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for air, the screams of the spirits echoing in my ears. I ran blindly down the stairs, my heart racing, the shadows chasing me into the night. I needed to escape. I needed to be free from the mirror's grasp. I burst outside into the cool night air, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The city's lights blurred around me, and I felt an overwhelming urge to distance myself from the darkness that had tried to consume me. Days passed, and I tried to forget the mirror, but the remnants of that encounter haunted my every step. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, whispers taunted me from the darkness. I was never truly free. I could feel the weight of my apathy pressing down, a constant reminder of the darkness I had nearly embraced. Then, one evening, while sitting in my cluttered apartment, I found myself staring at the empty space where the mirror had once stood. The silence was suffocating. Had I truly broken free, or had I merely scratched the surface of something deeper? I realized I had let the opportunity for change slip away, allowing my apathy to creep back in. In a moment of clarity, I grabbed my phone and began typing furiously. I would document everything: the mirror, the rituals, the spirits. I had to share my story, to warn others about the dangers that lurked in the shadows. It was a small step, but it was a step toward reclaiming my life. As I poured my thoughts onto the screen, the whispers transformed into words, urging me to continue. My fingers flew over the keys, and I began to feel a flicker of purpose. I would no longer be defined by my apathy. I vowed to seek out the stories of others who had faced similar darkness. I would shine a light on the shadows, ensuring no one else would fall victim to the allure of the unknown. The mirror had nearly consumed me, but I had fought back. And in that struggle, I discovered the strength I never knew I possessed. The shadows in my mind would always linger, but now they would serve as a reminder of my journey. I had faced the abyss, and though it beckoned me still, I was determined to rise above it. Apathy would no longer be my prison. I would carve my own path, one that led away from the darkness and toward the light. With each passing day, my resolve grew stronger. I filled my evenings with research, combing through libraries and online archives for tales of the mirror, Victor Draven, and anyone who had encountered its dark allure. The more I learned, the more I realized that this was about more than just a cursed object. It was a testament to the human struggle against our deepest fears and desires. I began reaching out to others who had experienced similar phenomena, finding online forums and communities dedicated to the supernatural. At first, the stories were scattered, each account a thread in a larger tapestry of horror. Some described mirrors that showed more than reflections, others spoke of objects that seemed to whisper secrets and promises of power. I felt a kinship with these voices, a connection that transcended the distances between us. One evening, as I scrolled through a particularly active forum, I stumbled upon a post from a user named Eliza. She wrote about her own encounters with a cursed mirror that had haunted her family for generations. Unlike mine, her mirror had been passed down through her ancestors, each owner succumbing to its dark influence. Her family was plagued by misfortune, culminating in her brother's tragic disappearance. Reading her account sent chills down my spine. The parallels were uncanny. I quickly drafted a response, sharing my own experience and inviting her to connect. Within hours, she replied, eager to share her story. We arranged a video call, both of us feeling the weight of our shared burden. When we finally spoke, I was struck by her intensity. Eliza had a fire in her eyes that spoke of battles fought and losses endured. It's been years since I've felt free, she confessed, her voice trembling with emotion. The mirror took my brother, and I've spent every waking moment trying to find him. But it never stops. My family is still haunted. Her pain resonated with me. I thought I had escaped its grasp, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But it's like a shadow that never leaves. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched, even now. Eliza nodded, understanding in her eyes. It's not just a mirror, Jake. It's a portal, a conduit to something beyond our understanding. We have to close that portal for good. That night, we devised a plan. We would conduct a ritual to sever the mirror's connection to our lives and put an end to the darkness once and for all. We researched protective spells and cleansing rituals, drawing from various traditions. It was empowering to feel like I was taking control, finally confronting the shadows instead of running from them. As we prepared for the ritual, I felt a mixture of excitement and fear. The thought of facing the darkness that had haunted me for so long filled me with dread. But I knew I had to try. Eliza would join me via video call, providing moral support as we confronted our fears together. The night of the ritual arrived. I set up my small living room as a sacred space, lighting candles and arranging crystals I had purchased online. Each item was chosen carefully, imbued with intentions of protection and clarity. I could feel the energy in the room shift as I lit the final candle, illuminating the darkness that had seeped into every corner of my life. I sat cross-legged on the floor, phone in hand, and Eliza's face appeared on the screen, framed by her own flickering candlelight. She looked determined, her expression a mix of resolve and vulnerability. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, taking a deep breath to steady my racing heart. We began the ritual, reciting our chosen incantations in unison. The words felt powerful, resonating through the air like a chant that awakened something deep within us. As we spoke, I focused on the memories of the mirror, the fear, the shadows, the whispers, and visualized severing their hold on my life. With each word, I felt a warmth envelop me, a protective barrier forming around us. The candles flickered violently, casting dancing shadows on the walls, but I pressed on. Eliza's voice was a steady anchor, guiding me through the ritual. As we reached the climax of the incantation, a chill swept through the room. I could see Eliza's expression shift, eyes wide with fear. "Jake, something's wrong," she exclaimed, her voice tinged with panic. The shadows around me thickened, swirling like a storm, and I felt the oppressive weight of darkness pressing in. "Don't stop," I shouted, my voice shaking as I fought against the rising tide of fear. We have to finish this. With one final, powerful incantation, we raised our hands toward the screen, channeling all our energy into the moment. I envisioned the mirror shattering, its shards falling away like the chains of my own past. In that instant, the shadows recoiled as if struck, and a deafening silence enveloped the room. The darkness dissipated, leaving behind an ethereal glow. I felt a surge of relief wash over me, a warmth that filled the spaces where fear once resided. Then, the screen flickered. Eliza's face froze, eyes wide with terror as the shadows swirled behind her, coiling like serpents. "Jake," she screamed, her voice cutting through the silence. I felt a surge of desperation. "No." "Eliza, don't look away," I shouted, but it was too late. The shadows lunged at her, and her scream echoed through the line before the connection was severed, leaving me in a deafening silence. My heart raced as I stared at the dark screen, fear coiling around my throat like a vice. The shadows in my apartment writhed, whispering promises of despair, beckoning me closer, but I couldn't succumb. I had faced my darkness and had come too far to turn back now. I fumbled to gather the remnants of our ritual candles, crystals, the notes we had taken, and decided to take a final stand. I couldn't let the mirror's influence take another life. I rushed to my kitchen, grabbing a pot of boiling water and a knife. The whispers crescendoed around me, angry and insistent, but I held my ground. "You won't take me," I shouted, my voice echoing in the silence. I would end this, one way or another. With trembling hands, I grabbed the knife and carved symbols into the air, creating a protective barrier around me. Then I poured the boiling water into a bowl, using it to cleanse the space, symbolically washing away the remnants of the mirror's darkness. The shadows writhed violently, and I felt a surge of energy pushing against me. It was as if the darkness itself was fighting back, but I refused to back down. "You will not take me," I roared, repeating our incantation once more, louder and more determined than before. In that moment, the shadows recoiled and I felt a bright light erupt within me. I focused all my energy into one final declaration, envisioning the mirror shattering into a million pieces, sealing away the darkness forever. As the words left my lips, a blinding flash enveloped the room. I felt the warmth of light wash over me, cleansing every ounce of fear and despair. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath as the shadows dissipated, leaving only silence in their wake. I lay there, heart pounding, feeling the weight of the world lift from my shoulders. The darkness had been banished, and in its place was an overwhelming sense of peace, but I couldn't shake the fear for Eliza. I grabbed my phone, praying the connection would still be intact. I scrolled through my contacts, trembling fingers hovering over her name. What if she was lost? What if the darkness had taken her? I hesitated for just a moment before hitting call, anxiety coursing through me. When the ringing finally stopped, I heard a faint voice on the other end. "Hello?" "Eliza," I gasped, relief flooding my veins. "Are you okay? What happened?" "I'm fine, Jake," she replied, though her voice trembled. "I don't know what just happened. I felt something. It was like a surge of energy, and then it was gone." We talked for hours, piecing together our experiences and the ritual. It turned out that when the connection severed, we had both been pulled into a whirlwind of shadows, but somehow we had managed to break free. It felt like a shared victory, our bond strengthened through our struggles against the darkness. In the weeks that followed, I found myself transformed. The mirror's dark influence had been banished, and I was determined to turn my life around. With Eliza's encouragement, I began writing a book about our experiences, weaving together our stories of confrontation and resilience. Each chapter was an exploration of the human spirit's fight against darkness. I included the tales of others I had encountered online, weaving their experiences into a tapestry of survival. I wanted to show that we are not alone in our struggles, and that there is always a way to reclaim our power. Eliza became my co-author, and together we poured our hearts into the project. It became a labor of love, a testament to our journey from fear to empowerment. With every word, I felt the weight of my past lifting, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. As I stood in front of the mirrorless wall in my apartment, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. I had faced my fears and transformed them into something beautiful. The shadows no longer held sway over my life, and I was determined to help others find their light as well. Our book was published, and I couldn't believe the response. Readers reached out, sharing their own stories of darkness and triumph. Some told me they had faced mirrors of their own, while others spoke of different struggles entirely. With each new message, I felt a connection to those who had once felt alone in their battles. I started a blog, inviting people to share their experiences, creating a community of support and healing. The darkness that had once threatened to consume me now became a source of strength. Through it all, Eliza remained by my side. We became friends and allies, united in our mission to shine a light on the shadows that linger in our lives. Together we led workshops and spoke at events, encouraging others to confront their fears and reclaim their power. The journey wasn't easy, and remnants of the past still lingered in the corners of my mind. But I learned to embrace those shadows, understanding that they were a part of me. Rather than let them dictate my life, I chose to acknowledge them and use that awareness to forge ahead. Years later, as I stood on stage speaking to a crowd of eager faces, I felt a surge of gratitude. I had transformed my fear into purpose, helping others reclaim their narratives. The echoes of the mirror's whispers faded into distant memories, replaced by the powerful stories of those who had overcome their own darkness. As I finished my talk, a wave of applause washed over me, and I smiled, knowing that I had turned my struggle into strength. The shadows would always be there, but now they were a reminder of the light I had found within myself. Together we could illuminate even the darkest corners, turning fear into hope and despair into empowerment. The journey continued to unfold in ways I had never imagined. The book we wrote, Reflections of the Dark, resonated with so many people that it quickly gained traction in the literary world. We were invited to speak at conferences and host panels on mental health, resilience, and the power of storytelling. Each invitation felt like a new opportunity to spread our message that darkness is not something to be feared but confronted, understood, and ultimately transformed. The community we built around our shared experiences flourished. People began sharing their stories through our blog, revealing encounters with shadows both literal and metaphorical. Each post was a reminder that we were not alone in our struggles. It created a safe space for vulnerability, and the connections formed through these stories were powerful and healing. One day I received an email from a young woman named Mia. She had read our book and was deeply moved by the themes of resilience and recovery. Her own story was harrowing. She had grown up in a home filled with emotional abuse, often retreating into her room to escape the turmoil. She wrote about how she had stumbled upon a broken mirror while cleaning out her childhood home. The mirror had once belonged to her grandmother, and despite its shattering, it seemed to hold a piece of her family's history, a history of fistory. Mia's email struck a chord in me. She spoke of the weight of her family's darkness, how she felt compelled to confront it and find closure. She expressed a desire to write her own story, but struggled with the fear of re-experiencing the trauma. Inspired by her bravery, I reached out to her, inviting her to share her journey through our platform. Over the next few months, Mia and I exchanged messages, each one deepening our connection. I encouraged her to take her time and write at her own pace. I shared my own experiences of transformation and healing, reminding her that confronting the past could be a cathartic process. Eventually, Mia submitted her story, a poignant and beautifully written account of her struggles and triumphs. Her words poured from the page with raw honesty, capturing the pain of her childhood, but also the strength she had found in herself. I was moved to tears as I read her submission, recognizing the power of her vulnerability. We published her story on our blog, and the response was overwhelming. Readers were touched by her honesty, many sharing their own experiences of similar struggles. Mia found solace in the outpouring of support, and I felt honored to be a part of her journey. As our platform grew, we organized community events, inviting contributors to share their stories in person. We established a monthly storytelling night, a safe haven where individuals could come together to recount their experiences. It became a celebration of resilience, an acknowledgement that healing often begins with the courage to speak out. One evening, at one of our storytelling nights, I sat in the audience, listening to Mia as she stepped onto the stage. She had blossomed into a confident speaker, her voice steady as she shared her story with an audience that filled the room. The energy was electric, and I could feel the collective breath being held as she spoke. I used to believe that my past defined me, she began, her eyes scanning the crowd. But now I know that it's just a part of my journey. I've learned to reclaim my narrative, to take back the power that was stolen from me. As she spoke, I noticed a shift in the audience. Heads nodded in agreement, tears glistened in eyes, and the air was thick with empathy. Mia had not only transformed her pain into strength, but she had also inspired others to do the same. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. It was more than just a round of appreciation, it was a collective acknowledgement of the courage it took to share one's story. As Mia stepped down from the stage, she was met with hugs and words of support from strangers who had been moved by her journey. I felt a surge of pride for her. We had both faced the darkness that had threatened to consume us, but together we had created a community where others could shine their lights. The stories we shared became a testament to the power of connection, the way vulnerability could foster healing. As months turned into years, I continued to write and speak about my experiences. Each opportunity felt like a new chance to empower others, to remind them that they were not defined by their shadows, but by the strength they found in confronting them. One day, I received an unexpected email from a publisher interested in turning our book into a documentary. The idea thrilled me. Reflections of the Dark would reach a wider audience, allowing more people to hear the stories of those who had confronted their own demons. I eagerly accepted the proposal, and soon the wheels were in motion. Filmmakers came to interview Mia, Eliza, and me, capturing the essence of our journeys on camera. They wanted to explore the impact of the mirror and the stories that had blossomed from our experiences. The filming process was intense. We revisited our darkest moments, peeling back layers we thought we had fully healed. But with each retelling, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. I realized that sharing our stories was not just about reliving the pain, it was about celebrating the victories and honoring the resilience that emerged from the struggle. The film crew followed us to our storytelling events, capturing the raw emotions and connections forged in those moments. The atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter, tears, and the unmistakable sense of community. We were all united by a common thread, the determination to reclaim our narratives. As the project progressed, I began to notice a shift in my own perspective. The more I spoke about my experiences, the more I understood that healing is not a linear journey. There are peaks and valleys, moments of triumph and times of vulnerability. It's in those moments of vulnerability that we often find our greatest strength. When the documentary was finally released, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I had poured my heart into this project, and I hoped it would resonate with others. The premiere was an emotional experience, filled with friends, family, and supporters who had been part of our journey. As the credits rolled, I could feel the collective breath of the audience. It was a moment of reflection, viewers grappling with their own shadows, their own stories. The film sparked conversations and people began to share their experiences, finding connection in the shared struggles. After the screening, I stood by the exit, greeting attendees as they left. Many approached me with tears in their eyes, sharing how the documentary had touched them. Some spoke of their own battles with darkness, while others expressed gratitude for the message of hope and resilience. One woman in particular stood out. She approached me, visibly shaken. "Your story reminded me of my own," she said, her voice trembling. "I lost my brother to addiction, and for years I felt like I couldn't talk about it. But hearing your journey, it gives me hope." I hugged her tightly, feeling the weight of her pain. "You're not alone," I whispered, knowing the power of connection in that moment. "We can heal together." As the evening wound down, I looked around the room, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. We had created a space where people could feel safe enough to confront their shadows, share their truths, and begin their healing journeys. The documentary continued to gain traction, leading to speaking engagements at universities and conferences. I realized that the mission had evolved beyond my initial fears. It was no longer just about my story, it was about the collective experience of those who had fought their own battles. Years later, as I sat down to write the sequel to Reflections of the Dark, I reflected on how far I had come. I thought about the people I had met, the connections I had forged, and the impact our stories had made. Each chapter felt like a continuation of our shared journey, a celebration of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a light waiting to be found. In the midst of writing, I received a call from Mia. She was bursting with excitement, her voice ringing through the phone. "Jake, you won't believe this. I've been invited to share my story on a national platform." I could hear the joy in her voice. "That's incredible. I'm so proud of you," I exclaimed, thrilled that she was stepping into the spotlight. "You deserve every bit of this recognition." We talked for hours, strategizing her approach and discussing what she wanted to convey. "I want to tell people that they can break free from the chains of their past," she said, her passion evident. "I want them to know that they are not defined by their struggles." When the day of her appearance arrived, I watched from home, my heart swelling with pride as she stood in front of the camera. Her message was powerful, filled with authenticity and strength. She spoke candidly about her childhood and the journey of reclaiming her narrative. As the segment came to an end, the host invited viewers to reach out for support if they were struggling. It was a reminder that vulnerability could spark connection and healing, creating ripples of hope in the world. After the broadcast, Mia called me, her voice trembling with emotion. "I can't believe I did it. I feel so free. Thank you for believing in me," she said, tears of joy evident in her voice. "You did this on your own," I replied, feeling a profound sense of gratitude for our journey together. "You found your voice, and now others will find theirs through you." As I continued writing, I often reflected on the power of storytelling. Each tale shared was a step toward healing, a way to confront the shadows that lingered. I realized that while darkness may always exist, it does not define us. We can choose to illuminate our paths, transforming our struggles into sources of strength. The sequel, Shadows to Light, became a testament to that journey, a collection of stories that celebrated resilience and community. As I wrapped up the final chapters, I felt a sense of closure. I had taken my darkness and turned it into something beautiful, and in doing so, I had inspired others to do the same. The book launch was an emotional event. Friends, family, and community members gathered to celebrate the release. I was overwhelmed by the love and support, the faces of those who had walked alongside me on this journey. As I spoke to the crowd, I felt a familiar warmth wash over me, the knowledge that we were all part of something greater than ourselves. "Thank you for being here tonight," I began, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "This book is not just my story, it's a testament to the power of vulnerability, connection, and healing. Together we can confront our shadows and emerge stronger." As I looked into the sea of faces, I saw hope reflected in their eyes. We were all bound by our shared experiences, each person a flicker of light in the darkness. The stories we had shared were not just ours, they belonged to everyone who had ever faced a shadow. The applause echoed in the room, and I felt a surge of gratitude. I had turned my fear into purpose, transforming my journey into a beacon of hope for others. In that moment, I knew that while darkness may always be a part of life, we have the power to illuminate our paths and create a community where healing flourishes. As I stepped down from the stage, a familiar face approached me. Eliza, my steadfast companion through this journey, enveloped me in a warm hug. "You did it, Jake. You turned your story into something that will help so many others." "Thank you for always believing in me," I replied, grateful for her unwavering support. "I couldn't have done this without you." We stood together, looking out at the crowd, knowing that our mission was far from over. There were still stories to be shared, lives to be touched, and healing to be fostered. The journey had transformed us, and now we had the opportunity to inspire others to confront their own shadows and find a light within. As the evening wound down, I looked around at the community. We had built a tapestry of stories, resilience, and hope. Together we would continue to shine a light on the darkness, reminding ourselves and others that even in the depths of despair, we can always find our way back to the light. The echoes of our journeys would resonate long after the night ended, guiding us forward into a brighter future. In the months that followed the launch of Shadows to Light, the impact of our work began to ripple outward in ways I had never anticipated. The stories shared at our events grew in depth and complexity, each one a testament to the human spirit's resilience. New faces appeared in the audience, people eager to share their truths, their struggles, and their victories. One evening, a young man named Oliver took the stage. He was nervous, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched his notes. "I've never shared my story before," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I hope that by speaking, I can help someone else who feels lost." As he recounted his experiences with depression and isolation, I could see the audience hanging on to every word. Oliver's honesty cut through the room, revealing the raw vulnerability that so many people felt but rarely expressed. He spoke of moments when darkness threatened to pull him under, but also of the glimmers of hope that began to shine through as he sought help and learned to lean on others. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood, clapping and cheering, but I noticed something else, a palpable energy of connection and support. Oliver stepped off the stage, tears glistening in his eyes, and was immediately embraced by several audience members, each sharing their own stories of struggle. It was a moment that encapsulated the very essence of what we had created, a safe space for healing. As the months turned into years, the community continued to grow. We held workshops, wrote more books, and even created an online platform where people could share their stories anonymously if they wished. Each story added another layer to our mission, reminding us that no one is alone in their battles. I often reflected on how far I had come since the days of feeling trapped by my own darkness. It was as if I had transformed from a mere observer in my life to an active participant, empowered by the very stories that had once haunted me. Each time I shared my narrative, I felt lighter, more liberated. It was a catharsis I hadn't expected. One day, as I was preparing for another storytelling event, I received an unexpected message from Mia. She had been invited to speak at a national mental health conference and wanted me to join her as a co-panelist. My heart raced with excitement. This was an incredible opportunity to reach a wider audience and spread our message even further. The conference was held in a large convention center, buzzing with energy and filled with people from all walks of life. When it was our turn to take the stage, I felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. This was a platform where our words could truly make a difference. Mia and I spoke passionately about our journeys, the importance of sharing stories, and the healing power of vulnerability. As we wrapped up our presentation, we opened the floor to questions. One woman stood up, tears streaming down her face, and shared her own battle with depression. "I've always felt like I was alone," she said, her voice trembling. "But hearing both of your stories makes me realize I'm not." The room erupted in supportive applause, and I felt a wave of solidarity wash over us all. This was why we did what we did, to break down the walls of isolation, to create a community where people could come together and support one another. After the conference, I received numerous messages from attendees expressing how our words had resonated with them. Many shared their stories, recounting moments of despair and triumph, and I realized that we had ignited a spark of courage in them. Each story reaffirmed that healing is a collective journey. When one person shines a light on their darkness, it inspires others to do the same. As the years rolled by, I found myself increasingly immersed in this mission. I published more books, collaborated with mental health professionals, and became an advocate for mental health awareness. Each endeavor felt like a step toward a greater purpose. Eventually, I decided to host an annual storytelling festival. It would be a weekend dedicated to sharing stories of struggle, resilience, and hope, a celebration of the human experience. The first festival was a success, attracting people from across the country. We created a vibrant atmosphere filled with art, music, and of course, storytelling. As I stood on stage during the festival's closing ceremony, looking out at the sea of faces illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Each story shared, each connection made, was a reminder that we were not alone in our struggles. Together, we had forged a community that embraced vulnerability and celebrated resilience. In that moment, I realized that my journey was far from over. There were still countless stories to be told, lives to be touched, and healing to be fostered. The shadows that once felt suffocating had become a source of light, a guiding force that illuminated the path for others. As the festival came to a close, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the years slip away. I knew that the impact of our work would continue to grow, reaching new hearts and minds long after the lanterns were extinguished. In the years to come, the Storytelling Festival blossomed into a cherished annual tradition, each year bringing together more voices and fostering deeper connections. I found fulfillment not only in sharing my own story, but in witnessing the transformation of others as they stepped into their truth. Ultimately, the shadows I once feared had transformed into a source of strength. They reminded me of the importance of community, the power of shared experiences, and the profound impact of vulnerability. I was no longer a prisoner of my past, but a beacon of hope for others navigating their own journeys. As I continued to write and share, I knew that my story was part of a much larger tapestry, a narrative woven together by countless individuals who dared to confront their darkness. And in that realization, I found peace. Each story, every encounter, and all the connections made had brought us closer together, creating a tapestry of resilience and hope that would shine brightly for generations to come. The journey would never truly end. It would continue to evolve, illuminating the path for those still searching for their own light amidst the shadows. And so, I embraced the journey ahead, knowing that each step forward was an opportunity to inspire others, to heal together, and to remind ourselves that in the end, we are never truly alone. Echoes of the Abyss. I grew up in a small coastal town where the fog rolled in like a shroud and the air was heavy with the scent of salt and secrets. The cliffs loomed above us, jagged and formidable, casting long shadows that reached into our lives. The locals warned us about the cliffs, sharing whispered stories of men who had vanished into the abyss, leaving nothing behind but echoes of their despair. The tales were woven into the fabric of our community, and I had heard them all, but I always brushed them aside as mere folklore until they came from my family. It began with my grandfather, Arthur Whitaker, a man whose tall, imposing figure was matched only by the darkness in his eyes. He had an air of mystery about him, as if he carried the weight of unspeakable secrets. My childhood was filled with his stories, tales of adventure and wonder. But there was one tale he never spoke of, the tale of the ghost that haunted the cliffs, a spirit that possessed the men of our family, one after another. I remember sitting at his feet one stormy night, lightning illuminating the room with each crack of thunder. My heart raced as I asked him about the cliffs, the haunting stories that accompanied them. His expression shifted, fear flashed in his eyes, and for a moment I saw a flicker of vulnerability in the man I had always perceived as strong. "Stay away from those cliffs, boy," he warned, his voice barely a whisper. "They're cursed. The spirit of a man who leaped into the ocean wants something from us. It seeks vengeance." But I was young and curious, dismissing his warnings as the ramblings of an old man. My teenage years were filled with rebellion, and the pull of the cliffs was impossible to resist. I began to explore the rocky ledges that overlooked the tumultuous sea, drawn by an inexplicable force. I felt a strange connection to the place, a sense of belonging that I couldn't quite explain. As the years passed, my father, Robert Whitaker, began to unravel. He was a kind man, filled with laughter and warmth, but the weight of the past slowly consumed him. Late one evening, he returned home from the local bar, his eyes filled with shadows, as if he had seen something that had forever changed him. He poured himself a drink, his hands shaking as he stared into the glass. "Dad, what's wrong?" I asked, concern lacing my voice. He sighed heavily, the lines on his face deepening. "I met a man tonight, son. He spoke of the ghost, the spirit that haunts the cliffs, possessing the men of our family." His voice trembled as he spoke, and for the first time I saw genuine fear etched into his features. "Come on, Dad. You don't believe in that nonsense, do you?" I scoffed, my teenage bravado masking my own growing unease. But he continued, "It's not just a story. I felt it. The man, he looked at me with such intensity. He said the spirit is coming for me, that it's been watching me. I don't know how to explain it, but I believe him." I rolled my eyes, attempting to lighten the mood. "You've had too much to drink. Let's just forget about it." But as I said those words, a knot of dread began to form in my stomach. The following weeks were a blur of tension and unease. My father grew increasingly withdrawn, haunted by a presence that he could neither see nor escape. Late at night, I would hear him muttering to himself, pacing the floors, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the hallways. I found him standing at the window, staring out at the cliffs, a haunted look in his eyes. One fateful night, after another long day of silence, he disappeared. The house felt empty, the walls closing in as I searched for him. Panic rose in my throat as I dashed out into the night, the fog wrapping around me like a cold embrace. I stumbled down the path leading to the cliffs, my heart racing with each step. The ocean roared below, crashing against the rocks like a beast seeking to claim its prey. "Dad," I shouted, my voice swallowed by the wind. "Where are you?" I reached the edge of the cliff, peering into the abyss. The moonlight reflected off the water, illuminating the depths with a ghostly glow. And then, I saw him, my father, standing at the very edge, his silhouette framed against the darkness. "Dad, please come back," I yelled, terror gripping me. "You're scaring me." He turned slowly, and when our eyes met, I felt a chill race down my spine. The warmth that had once radiated from him was gone, replaced by an emptiness that sent waves of dread crashing over me. "It's too late, son," he murmured, his voice distant, as if he were speaking from beyond the veil. "I can't escape it. The spirit is here." "Dad, don't," I pleaded, but it was too late. With a sudden, horrifying clarity, I watched as he stepped forward, into the darkness, disappearing into the churning waves below. The ocean swallowed him whole, and I fell to my knees, screaming his name, but the wind howled louder, drowning my cries in a cacophony of despair. Weeks turned into months, and the weight of grief settled over me like a shroud. The whispers of the town grew louder. They spoke of the curse, of the Whitaker men who had met their fates on those cliffs. I felt the shadows closing in around me, and the weight of my family's history pressed down like a heavy fog. But I refused to succumb. I spent my days working, trying to forget the horrors that had unfolded. However, as the sun dipped below the horizon each night, the darkness crept back in. I found myself drawn to the cliffs, unable to resist the pull of the abyss that had claimed my father. One evening I stood at the precipice, the wind tugging at my clothes, a storm brewing in the distance. The air crackled with electricity, and I felt a chill that reached deep into my bones. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned, half expecting to see my father's silhouette, but the cliffs stood empty, a barren wasteland of stone and shadow. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the fog, a man, tall and thin, with an unsettling presence that sent a shiver down my spine. He wore an old fisherman's coat, tattered and frayed, and his eyes gleamed with a hunger that sent a chill through my soul. "You're a Whitaker, aren't you?" he rasped, his voice like gravel. I took a step back, fear tightening my chest. "Who are you?" "They call me Jonah," he replied, his smile too wide, too unsettling. "I've come to warn you. The spirit is coming for you too." "What do you mean?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "The curse runs deep, boy. It's a hunger that cannot be sated. It possesses the men of your family, one after another, until it gets what it wants. It craves your despair." "What does it want?" I felt my heart race, the gravity of his words settling over me. "Your soul, just like it took your father's," he replied, his gaze piercing. "You need to escape while you still can." But how could I escape? The cliffs were a part of me, a piece of my family's legacy that I could not ignore. I turned to run, the cold wind biting at my skin, but as I sprinted away, I could feel the spirit's presence closing in. The echoes of my family's despair reverberated in the air, a haunting melody that threatened to swallow me whole. Days turned into nights filled with nightmares. I could see my father's face, twisted in agony as he fell into the depths. I heard whispers in the darkness, felt the air grow thick with the presence of something malevolent. I knew it was only a matter of time before it came for me. One night, unable to sleep, I ventured out to the cliffs once more. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silver glow over the rocks. I felt a compulsion to confront the spirit, to end this cycle of despair that had plagued my family for generations. As I stood at the edge, the wind howled around me, a chorus of wailing voices that seemed to beckon me closer. "Come to me," the whispers echoed, seductive and haunting. "You are one of us." I shook my head, fighting against the pull of the abyss. "I won't let you take me," I shouted into the darkness, my voice trembling. Suddenly, a figure materialized before me, my father. His eyes were hollow, a reflection of the torment that had claimed him. "Join me, son," he pleaded, his voice a chilling echo of the man I once knew. "It's beautiful down here. Let go of your pain." "No," I cried, tears streaming down my face. "You're not my father. You're just a puppet of the spirit." The wind screamed in response, and the cliff seemed to tremble. I could feel the spirit's anger, a palpable force that threatened to crush me. "You belong to us," it hissed, the voices merging into a cacophony of despair. I stumbled back, the edge of the cliff looming dangerously close. "I won't let you take me," I screamed, summoning every ounce of strength I had. I turned and ran, the darkness nipping at my heels, desperate to reclaim its prize. Days turned into a blur, each moment filled with fear and dread. The townsfolk began to notice my deterioration. They whispered about the curse, their eyes filled with pity and concern. I tried to distance myself from the cliffs, but the spirit had other plans. It toyed with me, sowing seeds of doubt and despair. It wasn't long before I began to lose track of time. Nights turned into endless cycles of torment, and I could feel the presence of the spirit growing stronger. Each time I thought I was safe, it would strike, reminding me of my family's legacy of loss. The whispers grew louder, demanding my attention, begging me to join the ranks of the damned. One evening I found myself standing at the edge of the cliffs once more, the ocean roaring below. The sky was painted with shades of red and orange, a cruel reminder of the beauty that lay just beyond the darkness. I felt the spirit's presence, its malevolence wrapping around me like a noose. "Why are you fighting it?" a voice crooned from the shadows. I turned to see Jonas standing behind me, his face twisted into a mocking grin. "You can't escape your fate. It's written in the stars." "Leave me alone," I shouted, my voice breaking. "But it's so easy, isn't it?" he continued, stepping closer. "Just let go. Embrace the darkness. It will take away your pain." I gritted my teeth, feeling the tears stream down my cheeks. "I won't give in. I won't let you take me." "Ah, but you're already lost, my friend. You just don't know it yet." With a swift motion, he pointed towards the ocean below. "Join your father. The water is calling for you." In that moment, everything fell silent. The wind ceased its howling, and the ocean stilled as if it were holding its breath. I felt a surge of terror grip me as I looked into the depths. The ocean was dark, swirling with shadows that danced beneath the surface, taunting me with promises of solace and release. But then I remembered my father's face, the love and warmth he had once radiated. This spirit had twisted that love into something grotesque, but I would not let it take me too. I clenched my fists, grounding myself in the reality of my existence. "I am not afraid of you," I shouted, my voice echoing against the cliffs. "You will not claim me." The spirit roared in fury, a tempest of anger that shook the very ground beneath me. "You think you can resist? You are part of this legacy, boy. You cannot escape the fate of the Whitaker men." but I refused to back down. I could feel the spirit's grip loosening, the shadows receding as I summoned the strength of my ancestors. I thought of my grandfather's warnings, my father's pain, and I knew that I could end this cycle. I would not be the next victim. With a final scream of defiance, I stepped back from the edge, my heart pounding in my chest. The wind howled around me, and for a brief moment, I felt the presence of my family beside me, their spirits guiding me away from the brink. As I turned to flee, Jonah lunged forward, his fingers grasping for me. "You can't run from your destiny," he snarled, but I broke free, sprinting back towards the safety of the path. I ran through the town, past the familiar streets that had once felt so comforting. The shadows followed, taunting me with whispers of despair, but I pushed on, refusing to succumb to the darkness. I arrived home, my heart racing, the weight of fear heavy on my shoulders. But as I stepped inside, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. I could break this curse, end the cycle of despair that had haunted my family for generations. That night, as I lay in bed, I could feel the presence of the spirit lurking outside my window, waiting for me to give in to the darkness. But I steeled myself, reminding myself that I had the power to resist. I thought of my father, my grandfather, the men who had been claimed by the abyss, and I promised them that I would not become another name on the list of victims. Days turned into weeks, and slowly but surely I began to reclaim my life. I surrounded myself with friends, engaged in activities that brought me joy, and sought help from a therapist who guided me through the darkness. I was determined to break free from the chains of my family's legacy, and with each passing day, I felt the spirit's hold on me weakening. But just when I thought I had conquered the darkness, it returned with a vengeance. One evening as I stood on my porch, the storm rolled in, dark clouds swirling ominously overhead. The air crackled with electricity, and I felt a familiar chill creep down my spine. I turned, and there he was, Jonah, standing in the shadows, a wicked grin on his face. "Did you really think you could escape?" he taunted, stepping closer. "The spirit is angry, and it wants you more than ever. You've made it stronger by resisting. It craves your despair." "No," I shouted, shaking my head. "I won't let you take me." But he laughed, a low, menacing sound that sent chills down my spine. "You're already lost. It's only a matter of time before you join your father and grandfather in the depths." With those words, the storm erupted. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the darkness, and I could feel the spirit's fury surge through the air. I stumbled back, fear gripping my heart as I watched the shadows twist and swirl around me. "No," I screamed, trying to break free from the hold of despair. "I am not a victim." As I turned to flee, the wind howled, and I could hear the cries of my ancestors urging me to fight. I ran through the storm, my heart racing, the rain pouring down like a baptism of fire. And then I reached the cliffs. The ocean roared below, waves crashing against the rocks with a ferocity that mirrored my own turmoil. I stood at the edge, feeling the pull of the abyss, the whispers of despair threatening to consume me. But then I remembered my father's love, my grandfather's warnings, and the strength that had come from generations of men fighting against the darkness. I would not succumb, I would not let the spirit claim me. With a roar of defiance, I faced the storm, the spirit's presence swirling around me like a tempest. "You will not take me," I shouted into the chaos. "I am not afraid of you." The wind screamed in response, a furious howling that drowned out my voice. The shadows surged forward, clawing at my sanity, trying to pull me into the depths. But I fought back, summoning every ounce of strength within me. In that moment, I felt a surge of power, a connection to my ancestors who had faced the same darkness. I raised my arms, channeling their strength, and cried out, "You have no power over me." The spirit howled in rage, a tempest of fury and despair. The ocean churned, and for a brief moment, I felt the presence of my father beside me, guiding me away from the brink. The shadows writhed and twisted, but I stood my ground, refusing to give in. With one final scream, I plunged my fists into the darkness, and the world exploded in a blinding light. The shadows recoiled, and I could feel the spirit's hold slipping away. The whispers grew fainter, and the wind began to calm. As the storm dissipated, I collapsed to my knees, breathless and trembling. I had faced the abyss and emerged victorious. The echoes of the past faded into the distance, and the weight of my family's legacy began to lift. In the days that followed, I found peace. The shadows no longer loomed over me, and the whispers of despair quieted. I began to rebuild my life, honoring the memory of my father and grandfather without being chained to the past. The cliffs still stood, a reminder of the darkness that had threatened to consume me, but they no longer held power over my heart. I would visit them from time to time, standing at the edge and looking out at the vast ocean below. The waves still crashed against the rocks, a reminder of the struggles I had faced, but I knew now that I was not alone. The spirit may have haunted the men of my family for generations, but I had broken the cycle. The echoes of the abyss no longer whispered my name, and I was free. And as I turned away from the cliffs, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The darkness had tried to take me, but I had found my light in the depths of despair. I walked away from the edge, embracing the future with open arms, ready to carve my own path and honor the legacy of my family in a way that would not be defined by the shadows of the past. As I walked away from the cliffs, the weight that had once anchored me to despair felt lighter than ever. The storm had passed, both outside and within me, leaving behind a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. The whispers of my ancestors, which had once echoed like haunting sirens, transformed into a gentle reminder of resilience and love. I had faced the darkness head-on, unearthing the buried traumas of my family's past and confronting the malevolent spirit that had sought to claim me. The legacy of loss and despair had threatened to ensnare me, but through sheer determination, I had broken the chains that bound me to the abyss. In that moment of defiance, I realized that while the shadows might linger, they held no power over me. I could finally acknowledge my family's pain without allowing it to dictate my own life. Their struggles had shaped me, but they would no longer define my future. I now understood that the true strength of the Whitaker men lay not in their suffering, but in their ability to rise above it. With every step away from the cliffs, I felt a newfound freedom wash over me, an exhilarating sense of possibility blooming within my chest. As I turned away from the cliffs, a sense of renewed purpose filled me. The air was crisp and invigorating, a stark contrast to the heavy dread that had weighed on my spirit for so long. With each step away from that treacherous edge, I felt as if I were shedding the remnants of a burden that had been passed down through generations. The path ahead was not without its challenges. I knew that even though I had escaped the clutches of the spirit, the echoes of its influence would linger. The townspeople had their own perceptions, their own stories. They had witnessed my descent into darkness and would undoubtedly be curious about my apparent rebirth. But instead of shying away from their stares and whispers, I resolved to face them with an open heart. In the days that followed, I made it a point to reconnect with my roots. I began visiting the local community center, where families gathered to share meals, stories, and laughter. It was a place of warmth and belonging, a sanctuary from the isolation I had felt for so long. I volunteered to help with activities for children, discovering joy in their laughter and energy. Their innocence reminded me of the simple beauty of life, untainted by the shadows that had once consumed my own. Through this engagement, I found healing. I shared my story with those willing to listen, allowing my vulnerability to become a source of strength rather than shame. The more I opened up about my family's legacy of despair, the more I realized that I was not alone. Others had their own battles, their own ghosts that haunted them, and together we formed a bond that transcended our individual struggles. As I delved deeper into my family's history, I unearthed stories that had long been buried. I spoke with elders in the community who remembered my father and grandfather, and they painted a more nuanced picture of the men I had lost. They were not merely victims of the curse, but resilient individuals who fought against their demons in their own ways. I learned that my grandfather had faced the spirit with unwavering courage. He had refused to let it take him without a fight, a testament to the strength that ran in our blood. His story inspired me, igniting a spark of determination within me to honor his memory by continuing the fight against the darkness that had plagued our family. With this newfound knowledge, I began documenting my family's history, not as a chronicle of despair, but as a narrative of survival. I collected stories from relatives, piecing together a tapestry of resilience that highlighted the strength of those who had come before me. This project became a labor of love, a way to transform the pain of the past into a legacy of hope. Throughout this process, I also sought out new experiences that would further enrich my life. I enrolled in a local art class, allowing myself the freedom to express my emotions through creativity. The strokes of paint on canvas became a cathartic release, a way to channel the turmoil I had felt for so long. With every brushstroke, I transformed my pain into something beautiful, a reminder that even from darkness, light could emerge. My relationships flourished as well. I reconnected with old friends and forged new connections, surrounding myself with people who uplifted me. They became my support system, helping me navigate the complexities of life as I embraced this new chapter. We shared our stories, our fears, and our dreams, fostering an environment where vulnerability was celebrated rather than shamed. As I continued to grow, I began to recognize the importance of mental health. I sought therapy, delving into the layers of my psyche that had been buried beneath fear and despair. My therapist guided me through exercises that challenged my negative thought patterns, helping me reframe my understanding of myself and my family's legacy. I learned that healing is not linear, it ebbs and flows like the tide. But with patience and commitment, I could cultivate a sense of peace within myself. As the seasons changed, I felt a sense of renewal wash over me. The cliffs that had once represented despair now stood as a symbol of resilience. I made a promise to myself that I would never forget the battles fought by my ancestors, but would instead use their struggles as fuel for my own growth. I wanted to break the cycle of darkness and create a new legacy for future generations. One crisp autumn evening, I stood at the edge of the cliffs once more. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the landscape. The ocean roared below, waves crashing against the rocks in a harmonious dance. This time, instead of fear, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I thanked the spirits of my ancestors for their guidance and the lessons they had imparted. I had transformed my fear into strength, my pain into art, and my despair into connection. I understood that life is not merely a series of battles to be fought, but a journey of discovery and growth. The cliffs were no longer a place of death, they had become a reminder of my resilience, a testament to the power of choice. With each passing day, I embraced the light that had emerged from the darkness. I continued to share my story, inspiring others to confront their own ghosts and find their paths to healing. The town began to see me not just as the haunted man who had once stood at the edge of despair, but as a beacon of hope and resilience. In this new chapter of my life, I committed to nurturing relationships, pursuing passions, and fostering a sense of community. I established a support group for those grappling with mental health issues, creating a safe space for individuals to share their stories without judgment. Together, we worked to break the stigma surrounding mental health, empowering one another to seek help and embrace vulnerability. I also returned to the local community center, where I led workshops on creativity and self-expression. I encouraged participants to explore their emotions through art, reminding them that it's okay to confront the darkness within. With every brushstroke, every shared story, we illuminated the path toward healing, creating a tapestry of hope that enveloped us all. Reflecting on this journey, I realized that life is a series of choices. We can choose to let the darkness consume us, or we can rise above it, transforming our pain into strength. I have come to understand that while the ghosts of the past may linger, they no longer hold power over me. Instead, I embrace their presence as a reminder of resilience and growth. The spirit that once threatened to claim me has become a part of my story, but it does not define me. I am the architect of my own legacy, and I choose to build a future filled with hope, love, and connection. As I look ahead, I am filled with a sense of purpose. I will continue to honor my family's history while forging my own path, free from the shadows of despair. Life is a beautiful, intricate tapestry woven from both light and dark, and I am determined to create a narrative that celebrates resilience, love, and the indomitable spirit of survival. The cliffs may stand as a reminder of my past, but they will forever symbolize my triumph over the darkness, guiding me as I continue on this remarkable journey. As we reach the end of tonight's stories on Hauntales, it's time to let your mind drift away. Listen to the sound of the rain gently falling in the background. Let each drop calm your thoughts and ease you into a peaceful sleep. There's nothing to fear now, just the soothing rhythm of the rain. Focus on your breathing, let your body relax, and allow yourself to drift deeper into rest. Sleep peacefully, and we'll meet again tomorrow night for another story. Good night.